Welcome to C Squared Biz Growth Iron Sharpens Iron podcast, where CEOs and entrepreneurs share how they are overcoming business growth and sustainability challenges.
Hello, my name is John Hale III, and welcome to the C Squared Biz Growth Iron Sharpens Iron podcast today. Today we have Mr. Tom Linebarger as our guest. He's a former chairman and CEO of Cummins, Inc. He is now senior advisor at General Catalyst, and over 30 years at Cummins, he led a brown to green strategy, sustaining diesel engine leadership and expanding battery to electric and hydrogen powertrains. He also created a leadership program that trained over 150 leaders at the company, and we're excited that he's with us again today. Outside of Cummins, Tom chaired the Hydrogen Council, a global CEO-led group advancing sustainable hydrogen throughout the world. He also served on the Business Roundtable board, leading the International Trade Subcommittee, and chaired the U.S. to China Business Council. Tom currently serves as director at Mainspring, Republic Services, Capture 6, and Rise Up Together. He is recently retired lead director at Harley-Davidson and the chairman of the Central Indiana Community Partnership. Tom, again, welcome, and we're glad that you're here with us today.
John, thank you for that really kind introduction, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, thank you very much. We see how you're showing up today. CEO, former board director at Fortune 150 companies, and now in your current role. Can you give us, just share some insight on what experiences from early in your career or childhood most impacted who we see today?
Well, I would say this, John. I grew up in California. My mom and dad were divorced when I was young,
Okay.
and so my mom did most of the child rearing. When I was 6, they were divorced, and then my mom was a single mom for my brother and I. She had to go back to school because she had dropped out of college when I was born. She had to go back to school, work. So she raised us, did school at night, worked during the day. It was a hard go.
Okay.
And I think she, without her, to be fair, I
Sure.
wouldn't have none of the opportunities that I have today. So she really is the one that carried the household and made sure that we were ready to go to school every day. And we felt just as good as all the other kids. And so I chalk up a lot of my success to my mom setting us on the right track from the beginning. But I also learned from her. She obviously got it done. She bootstrapped the
Right.
whole operation. She, delivered. I realized that hard work is what it takes. And I think I'm a effort guy. Like, I think if there's something to be done, I'm going to give it my best go every time. But I also think I have some modesty in me. There's no question that I think I have smart ideas and all that kind of stuff, but I also recognize that without the help of others, I have no chance to achieve the kind of things that I want to achieve. And I think that came from her and from my experiences growing up with her and learning how to start from small, humble beginnings and figure out how to achieve a lot. And, we had support when we were young from the state.
Okay.
And I had teachers and people who helped. I had one teacher when I was in college where I didn't have enough money to go to college. I had a scholarship for $1,000 when I was a freshman, and that scholarship went away. And so I was $1,000 short on my tuition payment. And this professor, calculus professor, who, unbeknownst to me, went to the financial aid department and said, you should give this guy the extra money because he should stay in school here. Again, without that, who knows if I would have been able to finish at Claremont. So again, just throughout my life, I've had these helping hands along with a firm upbringing from my mom to set me on the right path.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's just an amazing story on just when we engage in others' lives in a positive way, just what the impact we can have, especially when you're looking at younger folks, through school, through college as well. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And I also understand that part of your journey when you started working at Cummins was that you started off as an intern. Is that correct?
That's right. So when I went to business school, I had been working in finance and investment for Prudential for 5 years. And I had a really great time there. I worked in New York for a year and a half, and then I went to Hong Kong and Singapore, and I did kind of venture capital investment kind of work, weirdly. Um, but I decided that I wanted to build companies. Like, I wanted to get in the ground floor and work on manufacturing and work on design and work on the basics of industry, especially of product industry. I was a mechanical engineer, and I wanted to build things where if you dropped them on your foot, it would hurt. Like, I didn't want to build software, things like that. I wanted something, meaty, I guess.
Right.
So when I was in business school, I interviewed with a number of companies. Most of the people that came to Stanford Business School were consultants and financial companies, Goldman Sachs, people like that. But I didn't want to do that. And one guy came from Cummins that I really liked, and he said, "Hey, if you," and I said, "Well, you're in Indiana. I'm in California. I'm not sure. Do I want to come there?" He goes, "Just come and have an internship and see." And I got an internship at Cummins, and they were initially going to put me in the strategy or finance department. I said, if you put me there, I won't come. I won't end up joining you. I want to be in the plant. And to Cummins' credit, they found a place in Walesboro, the Cummins mid-range engine plant. The plant manager agreed to take me on as an intern. I worked with the people on the shop floor, working on like improvement projects, what we called Kaizen projects at the time. I got to build some engines. I feel badly for all the people that own those Dodge Rams with those engines in there, but it was really an amazing experience, and I think it exemplifies my time at Cummins, where each of my jobs was a combination of contribution and learning that really built me into the executive I am today. So it was an amazing start as an intern, and every job I had since that time, I learned a ton.
Right. Right. Well, thank you for sharing. That's just an incredible story, starting off from an intern, then moving through the ranks, CFO, CEO, and chairman of a Fortune 150, I guess maybe 130-ish company now. That's an incredible journey. So thank you for
Mm.
sharing that.
You're welcome. It was,
Yeah.
by the way, John, it was a long
right.
journey. But again, I would just go back to the fact that when I joined the company, I was hired by the head of operations and technology, and he took it upon himself to talk to me about how to manage people. I remember the first time I had a management job, and I came in to have my one-on-one with my boss there, Joe Locree, and he said, "So tell me how it's going with your one-on-ones with your staff." I said, what do you mean? And he said, where you meet with them just one by one and you go through their tasks with them. And I said, I kind of looked at him blankly. He knew that I wasn't doing it. So he explained to me how to do the basics of you meet every week with your staff. You have a list of the things you want them to do. You ask them if they need help. So, this sounds so obvious, but no, it's not obvious unless someone shows you things. And I think I had that throughout my career. I had different leaders. Tim Solsa was another big mentor of mine. Bosses who took an interest in helping me learn how to be a good executive at the company. And without that, I think I wouldn't have been successful in the next round. So again, I just take that back to my initial statement, which is without the help of others, most of us cannot reach our potential.
Right. And and we just don't know what we don't know walking into a company, business environment. Despite all the great education we have, some things are very practical that we still need. And the beauty of it too, Tom, is you are humble enough and to be trained, and you have to be coachable as well.
Yeah. Well, there are many people that would say that I could use more humility, my wife included. That said, I definitely value the training and development that I got. Yeah.
Right, right. Can you share with us a risk you took, calculated risk, or a bold move, and maybe why it didn't work out the way you wanted to plan, and what you learned from that experience?
I would say, I throughout my career, strategy became kind of a focus area for me. I maybe because of my education or interest, but I really started to work on developing strategy for whatever area that I was in.
Hmm.
And I would say that the idea for strategy for me is to try to recognize patterns in the industry, to look outside and see what are the patterns, what are competitors doing, what are the big technology trends, try to take all that stuff that's out there and not literally, not just do what someone says, but take all that information in, try to create patterns, find patterns, see what it means for how you as your organization could compete and win.
Right.
And I think when you do that work, there's a lot of judgment. Yes, there's a lot of math and a lot of analysis, but honestly, there is no formula. And so I think I made plenty of judgment mistakes.
Okay.
I'm proud of a lot of the judgments, that we made, and some of them have really paid off for Cummins over the years, but not all of them. And one example is that, I was pretty convinced that hydrogen would play a role in commercial transportation in the United States. And the reason I thought that is the economics were pretty clear that if we have a electrical infrastructure for battery cars, we have hydrogen infrastructure for trucks. We allow the trucks to run through one set of stations, the cars to run through another. Even though hydrogen trucks are less efficient, in a full system basis than electric, it's much more dispatchable, easier to ship around, and you don't end up with charging stations packed with trucks that take 3 hours to charge and cars waiting behind them. I had just done all this economic analysis that 100% convinced me that this was going to happen, and it just didn't. So we built a hydrogen business. Accelera was the name of our business that had batteries and hydrogen. And I was convinced it was going to work. And we bought a company that made electrolyzers for hydrogen and made fuel cells for trucks. And to this day, I think it's not really taken off. Again, and that's one example, but there are, if we wanted to spend more time, there are dozens probably of examples where you make a judgment about what's going to work and it doesn't work. The key is to win more than you lose, to make sure that the judgments you make more often end up with success. And in that case, I also bet heavily on consolidating the diesel engine business at the same time. I said, yes, I'd like to make a bet on hydrogen, but I also like to make sure that we have a strong diesel and natural gas engine business. And it turned out that's been amazingly successful for Cummins.
Right.
So I would just say that, it's overall it was successful, but that doesn't mean every single one was exactly the right thing to do.
Thank you for sharing that. In particular, just the judgment calls that you as the CEO, and I'm sure you rely on members of your leadership team, but ultimately, as President Harry Truman says, the buck stops with you, that you have to make those decisions. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to CEOs and other leaders about how to build a high-performing team when you have really type A personalities, meaning well-trained, highly talented people that want to move up? How do you build that team?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously building high-performing leadership teams is that is the stuff of leadership, of being a CEO. If you can figure that out, you win.
Right.
But here's two pieces of advice given with humility.
Right.
One is that if you don't invest in the team itself, and I don't mean in the individuals, I don't mean in the strategy, I mean in how the team performs, in the methods by which you get your team to perform, you almost certainly won't have success. It's sort of like imagining, you have a basketball team and everybody just goes off and learns how to shoot and dribble and do all their skills, but you never actually learn how to play together. Right. And I think a lot of teams, by the time they show up to be on the leadership team, they've been working for 20 or 25 years. They're super capable people as individuals, but they don't figure out how we work together, because we all grow up differently. How we had conflict when we were young? Were our parents loud and arguing? Were they quiet and never argued in front of us? We all kind of come at these things differently. And so one person, when someone raises their voice, they go silent. Another person, when they raise their voice, they want to engage and get louder. Everybody has a different way they do it. And if we don't talk about those things and say, well, how are we going to manage this interaction with each other? How are we going to build trust among each other? What do we expect from each other as far as sharing? And that then our team will not perform well together. And I think it's hard when you're super busy and there's a million problems and you have quarterly earnings due tomorrow and all this kind of stuff, to take time out to say, let's have a little team session and work on each other's communication skills with each other. It feels like maybe like you're wasting time or distracting. And my argument is, if you're really expecting that team to perform, you're not wasting time. You're essentially preparing yourself for the NBA finals. Like, you need to perform. You need to perform
Right.
as a team.
Right.
The second thing I would say is that when you're a CEO, it's very easy to select people to work for you who think like you or share your the methods by which you take on conflict or investigation or strategy or whatever. You may think you're getting diversity. You may think, well, I'm getting different people of color. I'm getting women. I'm getting this. I'm getting that. Or again, some organizations, I don't even think try to do that, but they just basically think that they end up hiring people that do think the same way they do. The very best thing I ever did to get a high performance team is to try to find people who disagree with me more. They think about it differently. Like, sometimes I don't even understand how they're thinking about it. I like, they say things, I go, what in the world are you talking about? Those are the very best people to have on your team. Because if you just get a bunch of mini-me's, you haven't really added anything to your team. You're already able to make all those decisions yourself. What are they given to you? And I'm always trying to build a team that, when added to me, makes, way more, not just agrees with me. Because agreeing with me means that you'll agree with you all the way while you walk off the cliff and we all fall down to your death, right? So I just always wanted people who were going to make the team stronger, make me see my mistakes, make me, get better too as a leader. And those are people that come at things differently. They're willing to have conflict with you. They're willing to take you in new directions. And that means it's harder at first to manage that team, but the ultimate result is a stronger team.
Right. Understood. Totally. Thank you for sharing those words of wisdom with us and with our audience. Switching gears a little bit to corporate governance. As a CEO, when do you think, if I'm for those that are listening, CEOs of a private company, at what point should they establish a board of directors? And in that process, what point should they give up shares in the company thing?
Well, let me first talk about board of directors. I do have a view that all of us need to have enough humility to see that we're not going to catch everything. We're going to have times when we miss something. So I used to have this saying, like, everybody needs a boss. And the reason is they need a boss is for someone to tell them what's right in front of them. Like, you've been talking about this for a year and you haven't done it. Do it. And again, it's not that we don't all have discipline and we're not hardworking, but sometimes the thing that needs to be done is hard for us to do, or sometimes we just don't see the obvious. And so I think that's really valuable. I don't think that means you need a board of directors. You could have advisors. You could have, all kinds of different solutions. Maybe somebody working for you who feels like they have the ability to tell you that. But you definitely need someone or a group of people that you can go to and get advice, put something on the table that is difficult to tell other people, and get input from them, and someone to look at you and say, the answer is just go do it. So I think that's true whether you're a 2-person company or a 20,000 person company. And boards of directors, when you have them, or advisory boards or whatever, the important thing is not to use them as rubber stamps. Because as soon as you are finding them aggravating because they ask questions and all this kind of stuff, you need to get yourself right about, hey, it's to your benefit that they're there. So if they're not giving you advice that's useful, or they're not pushing on you to do things that you need to be thinking about doing, that's because you're not bringing the right stuff to them. And so when I first started as CEO, my board, I was feeling kind of, like I just wanted to move. I wanted to do these things, and
Right.
they kept asking questions and doing and I kind of felt like just running over stuff that didn't matter as much.
Mhm.
And I finally realized that this was my fault. I was just asking them to approve things after I was done thinking about them. And I just changed it around to say, ask them the question before you're done, before you've decided. Ask them for advice and thoughts before you've figured out the answer. And then it's not nearly as aggravating when they have opinions. In fact, it just helps you come up with a better answer. I think, yes, I think you should get advisory board or
Mhm.
something. If you're a startup, you should get some way to get input from people. And two is if you're not really getting what you want out of that, it's because you need to rethink what you're asking them and why you're asking them that.
Right. Those are great best practices, Tom, and to be able to share with our listeners. And that moves me on to the next question I had in mind was, CEO wears many hats, and particularly from a private company standpoint, they're often involved in raising capital for the company. So, how can CEOs, just from your experience, best position themselves to be able to raise capital for the companies, excuse me?
Yeah, that's something I'm learning more about actually in my new role is raising capital for the company. It's a big challenge. I mean, I think anyone who hasn't had to raise their own money, um, you need to know what that's like because that is a
Right.
whole nother story. You're talking
Right.
to people who have capital. The people who have capital in their funds, be they venture capitalists, family offices, whatever, they're stewards of that money, and so they're looking for ways to put investments in where to get a return back to their um, stakeholders, be they pension funds or whatever they are. And so they have a commitment and they're trying to understand whether this is going to do that. Yes, they're very passionate about, you know, technology and everything, but they're not really aligned with you in the sense that your company's success in launching is really not what they care about. Your company's success in giving them back money more than they gave
Yes.
you is really what they want. You might want that too, but right now what you want is just money to get going. So it's very difficult, I think, to get in their shoes and understand what the problem they're trying to solve,
Right.
and then and put your pitch in their terms,
Right.
because you are living your world. Like you're trying to get your company launched. You're trying to, and it's a great idea. You know it's a great idea. You know it's going to be super successful,
Mhm.
but they're trying to make sure that they're being a good fiduciary to whatever their shareholders are or whatever. So they want to hear certain things like, when will this money come back? How much risk
Right.
is there? And you're just saying, look, it's going to be great. So I think finding the match between those by trying to be in their shoes for just a minute. What's it like to be them? See if you can reconstruct your pitch in ways that they think. That would be one piece of advice I'd give. The second
Okay.
thing I'd say is that um, talking to a bunch of different investors about
Mhm.
the way they approach this problem is a really good idea. Just the
Right.
first investor you meet, don't redesign everything just for that one investor, because I've been very surprised to see the range of kinds of investors, how
Mhm.
they think about these things.
Right.
So if the investor you're talking to isn't giving you the answer you want, seek out other investors, because there are
Mhm.
ones that approach it differently. There are all kinds of different investment concepts, and maybe there's
Mhm.
one that matches what you're trying to do better. So
Right.
be broad in your thinking, not narrow.
Right. And this is a follow-up question that does your background as a CFA and a CFO, does that hinder or does that help you in terms of when you're having these various conversations?
Well, financial backgrounds helps a lot because most of these people are financial people. Not all of them. Some of them are technologists and things, and venture capital companies and things. But broadly speaking, you're going to be talking to a lot of financial people. So being able to speak in financial language is very, very valuable. So even if you're a technologist and you're trying to take a pitch to investors, I'd highly recommend having someone with a financial background kind of helping you put the pitch together. Again, back to the idea of getting in the other person's shoes. They're going to be talking in financial language.
Right.
You want to be talking in financial language. Again, there are exceptions. Like there are seed companies where it's a technologist to technologist thing. And then I'd say the exact opposite. If you're a financial person like me, you're better off to have the technologist go speak to them. Because that's who they want to speak to. They want to know like what your technology really is going to do. And if you're talking in terms of numbers and not technology, you're not going to compel them. So it really does depend on who your audience is. And that's the way I judge who shows up and how you show up. Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. That leads right into the next question. Can you share a little bit about your current role, General
Yeah.
Catalyst, just the work that you guys are doing, and why in your retirement, in air quotes, so to speak, why you're seeking this role, what excites you about it, why you get up every day to do it?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I retired from Cummins a couple of years ago, and I was doing a little advising, but broadly speaking, I wasn't working, and I was really enjoyed myself. I like skiing, so I was skiing each winter, 50 days or something. I was skiing a lot. I was biking a lot. I was really enjoying myself. And so the question is why stop? And what happened was I was just feeling a little like my mind didn't feel occupied enough. I was just feeling like I just had another set of things to do. And even my wife noticed that I was kind of chewing the furniture. I just wasn't really, you know, fully occupied mentally. And
Right.
I keep engaging her on all these conversations. And she's like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And I'm like, wait, let me explain to you this decision-making theory I have. And she's like, really? So she decided that I either needed more friends or I needed get a job. And I thought friends are hard to make. So I decided to try to go back to work again. And I met Hemant Taneja from General Catalyst, and General Catalyst is historically was a venture capital company, but is now kind of broadened into this broader investment and transformation company where they're trying to move industries by not only investing in the technology change agents, but also in kind of the broader investment groups. Like in the healthcare business, they decided to invest in a hospital group, and along with a bunch of healthcare AI startups. In the energy business, they wanted to do something similar. Since I had been in energy and I was advising him a little bit on a couple things, he said, "Hey, why don't you help me start this business?" So that's how I got into it. And it's, I've never done a startup in this way before. And frankly, I'm learning a lot about that. A lot of challenges for me, things that are very, very different than what I did before. And I have a lot left to learn there. But I am, trying to do a good job of stewarding that business's launch. I've got a couple partners in with me who are very, very good at technology and at this kind of startup. So they're helping me advance too. And so we're building this energy business from scratch. It's hard not to be excited about what the
Right.
opportunity is.
Sure.
And,
Yes.
my wife consistently asks me, like, are you sure you want to be working this hard? Because I am working really, really hard. And but it's exciting. It's because
Yeah.
it's new and exciting and I'm learning, which I think is the number one goal for me is to just keep learning.
Got you. Thank you for sharing that. And we talk about learning. It's pretty just a perfect segue here. We spoke a little bit about opening about the program that you developed to train 150 leaders at the company. Can you speak about talent development and some ideas, maybe best practices that be you at a
Mhm.
smaller company starting to hire and developing staff, or you're starting to scale and grow? But how should leaders, CEOs, think about developing talent within their companies?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I noticed some big differences between, bigger companies and smaller companies on this. For a bigger company, like Cummins, you know, we need to produce 10 or 20 leaders every single year with the scope to be able to run significant pieces of the business. And if we're not keeping up with retirements, it, we can't grow. So without leaders ready to go and take things, you aren't going to be able to grow. It's sort of, again, I don't mean to overdo the sports analogy, but like you show up without a center or something, or without a passing guard, and you just can't make it, right? You're not going to win. So you're always trying to. So I just decided that if that's the case, and I wanted to have a group that had strong values, strong emotional intelligence and business intelligence about our thing. I wasn't going to be able to buy all those in the market. I was going to have to build them. So we started this program to basically pump out enough capacity such that we could keep our company going and grow. With a startup, one of the challenges you have is you're essentially every day fighting for survival. You have to get capital, you have to get your business started. You're a month from being out of money almost all the time. Your time for coaching and talent development is limited. You have some, but not a lot. And so I think you need to at least start out with a set of people who can kind of do the things you need them to do without so much coaching and development. And maybe some, but not as much as you have time for maybe when you have a larger company and more hierarchy to deal with.
Right.
And also you probably for the first time don't need to produce 20 a year, right? You're kind of growing at initially, at a rate that you can maybe hire from the outside, or you can maybe, just kind of figure out how to manage it within your group. Everyone just ends up working a lot, frankly.
Right.
So, but that only goes for so long. And then eventually you start to grow. And now you need to start thinking about how you're going to do this talent development, not just hiring from the outside, but starting to do internal development. And what size it is that you move from one to the other is not entirely clear to me. But there is a moment when you need to start thinking to yourself, when do I switch from, hey, I got my core people, plus we hire a few experts in their areas, to I'm actually a talent machine that actually produces talent as a matter of part of my business. But there is a moment, and I think that's going from small startup to a sustainable organization, is trying to build that talent development pipeline.
Great insights for just entrepreneurs and leaders, no matter where they are in terms of size and where they're trying to scale. Additional questions about leadership is, Tom, how did you discover your superpower in terms of what do you think your superpower has been or is, and how did you realize that?
Yeah, superpower is a hard word for me. I think I mentioned this at the start, but I do feel like my mom and just my upbringing taught me to work at it. I think I do start from a position of I know some things, but I've always got stuff to learn, and I'm going to work at it. And I know that isn't everything, but I think being willing to, really work hard, be willing to improve yourself,
Right.
being open to the fact that it might not be them, it might be you, and then going to, starting to work on how to make it better is a very, very helpful trait. And especially the more senior you get and the more you start to believe your own press, you start to believe that your jokes have indeed got funnier,
Right.
whatever, as
Right.
opposed to, people are just laughing more because you're the CEO. I would just say that it's very important for you to see that you always have improvement to do. So for me, I'd say that's maybe my superpower. I work at it. I'm modest enough to know that I need to keep learning in order to keep up with at least my own goals for leadership excellence. And as long as I keep applying myself to it, I think I'll always get better. I do, I do care deeply about the people I work with. I don't think that's a superpower per se, but I do find that in the workplace, if you can have kind of professional relationships with people, and then you don't take a lot of risk, if things don't work out or whatever. But I think that isn't the right way. I think if you're going to engage people, you need to care deeply about them, and that means sometimes there's some hard conversations to have, and those are never pleasant. But I just don't think you can get the most out of people without demonstrating deep caring about them and trying to help them be the best version of themselves. It takes that to be a good leader. So I've always felt strongly that that's the right way to lead.
Okay.
I don't know. To me, it's what I think I enjoy that work. I think it makes people want to work with me more.
Right. Okay. Oh, fantastic. And the last question I have is you already shared a little bit about things that you do to relax and fun in terms of skiing, biking. Is there anything that keeps you up at night? Things that are on your mind?
Gosh. Yeah. I mean, all the time. I'd like to sleep more, frankly.
Okay.
But I think um, I do take my work, my job really seriously. And I do think when I'm trying to figure things out about how I could do better or how this company could run better or how I could get these relationships to produce more, work
Mm,
better, produce more, how I could resolve conflicts. I do spin those around in my head a lot, and
okay.
those keep me up.
All
And
right.
then once I feel like I have a groove, like I think I understand the approach, I think I know how we're gonna go, I
Mhm.
sleep easier. And I
Right.
I think it's there's always these moments early in when you got a new job or you have a new set of problems where it's just the answers aren't obvious, and you just have to live in that discomfort for a while, and that means you're going to be a little more tired. Probably, I'm going to be a little more tired,
Right.
but that's just the way my mind works. Is it works
Right.
on it, tries to address it, get to the place where I'm back in the groove, and then it's fine again.
Fine again.
I also
Gotcha.
do try to balance my physical. I try to do something physically so that I kind of keep my stress down under control. It really helps
Okay.
me when I balance physical with mental.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great.
Mm.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Tom, on C Squared Biz Growth Iron Sharpens Iron. Also, our audience, thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for listening to the C Squared Biz Growth Iron Sharpens Iron podcast. And check us out on social media, share, and subscribe.